The grounds for divorce in California are irreconcilable differences and legal incapacity. Typically, we're dealing with irreconcilable differences. That means that you and your spouse, no longer want to stay together. You want to separate. So in California, you don't want to be together anymore. That in itself is grounds to get divorced. It's not too hard to get divorced in California. You just file your petition and it's started. In California, the division of assets work in a way where it's a community property state, meaning that anything you earn during the marriage is split 50-50. Community property, your spouse gets half, you get half. Other states have equitable distribution, which is a whole different gamble, but in California, it's community property, so it's basically 50-50 split, unless you have a prenup. If you have a prenup, then your assets will be divided based on your prenup. So that's why when couples are getting married, if you don't want to have that default community property split 50-50, that's when you might want to elect to get a prenup so that you get to choose how your assets will be divided if you get divorced. In California, how your assets are divided isn't necessarily need to be based on California law. In fact, if you and your spouse are able to reach agreements, they can be divided however you want. If you want your spouse to have, a certain retirement asset and you want the other retirement asset, fine. It's whatever you want. If you want your spouse to keep all the assets because you feel really guilty because you cheated on your spouse, you feel like a terrible person, give your spouse all the assets. It's whatever you agree to. Usually when we come into play, when you come to our office, it's because you and your spouse are unable to reach agreements. And when you're unable to reach agreements, then it's usually best to have an attorney negotiate a settlement for you with your spouse's attorney or with your spouse directly. If we're unable to negotiate a settlement, or what we like to call, use cooperative counsel, kind of counsel cooperatively, then your matter might need to be escalated to the court. If it's escalated to the court, it sounds scary. It's not the end of the world. All that means is that a judge on the bench is going to make a decision as to how your assets are divided. And because California is a community property state, that means your assets will likely to be divided where your community property assets are split 50-50.